organize your code has the potential to make or break your project, and this is not just true for React. On one hand, if you overthink and get way too granular, you can end up with way too many nested directories inside one another. This creates a nightmare when it comes to debugging your code and updating features. And on the other hand, if you don't organize enough, you can end up with way too many files in the same level directory and no clear distinction about the relationship any of them have with one another. When you're trying to balance over and under organizing, just remember that the overall goal of your file system is to keep your related files close enough together so that updating them is easy. In this video, I'm going to go through my favorite ways from smallest project to largest project to organize files. Before we begin though, there's a few notes that are important to keep in mind. First, while this video focuses on React projects, it is not exclusive to React. Instead, it draws on principles that you can use in many different types of projects. For example, I did CRM development for years, and I use these principles all the time. Second, as we go through these examples, try not to overthink any of them. React doesn't have a hard rule for how you should be organizing your files. The best thing that you can do is to just start coding and start planning and be intentional with how you're making directories and where you're putting your files. Finally, regardless of the method you choose, I want you to avoid getting too granular. You do not need more than 4 nested directories in many situations. Although you might still need them in certain situations, just take a moment to think if there's a better way of organizing your code. Okay, with that said, let's go into our examples, talking from smallest project to largest project. Starting with small projects that are less than 30 files, you can try grouping by type. When grouping by file type, your files are neatly arranged based on functionality, making their reason for existing clear at first glance. Let's take a look at this coding project. We have a few folders and each one clearly specifies the types of files that are used. For example, is it a hook, a controller, a component, test file? This folder structure makes it clear what each file does. Already though, if I was to ask you how much testing coverage a certain feature has or what the main feature of your project is, it would be really hard at first glance to look at this and know the answer. More than that, it is unclear what the relationship the files have between one another is. For example, maybe the button and dropdown are part of a form, but the nav isn't, but the nav uses the dropdown as well. These relationships aren't clear right now and will become even less clear as the project scales. For this reason, you may see that this strategy can be good for building smaller projects or in combination with other strategies, but you will rarely use it on its own. Now, grouping by features. In a nutshell, grouping files by feature is a more scalable and efficient way to organize your projects. This structure organizes your project into several folders, with each folder representing a single feature. Each folder includes the JSX, CSS, tests, and other code required to create and maintain that one feature. Imagine that you had a bunch of files related to a specific feature, like a user login functionality. With folder by feature, you keep all of those files in one folder, making it clear that they work together for the same purpose. This way, when you need to update anything related to user login, you know exactly where to find all the relevant files. This concept aligns with a crucial principle in software development called co-location. Co-location simply refers to the practice of placing code as close to where it's relevant as possible. Another way to look at this, if you're still new to code, is that you wouldn't keep your forks and knives in the garage when you need them in the kitchen, right? Same goes for your folders and files. By following the co-location principle and organizing files by feature, you'll find that files which frequently change together stay together. Now, there are still some drawbacks to this method, and what you may notice is that the purpose of each file can get harder to notice. So to make it easier to understand the purpose of each file, we can adopt consistent naming conventions. So let's explore some common file types and their corresponding naming patterns as it relates to React. Let's start with components. If we follow the Airbnb style guide, which I have linked in the description below, we should name the component files as component name.jsx, and it's recommended to have only one component per file. This way it's evident which file corresponds to which component. For style sheets related to your components, you can use the same name as the component file, but with the .css extension. And for testing files, use the naming convention component.test.js. This clarifies that these files contain test code for the specific component. When your project gets bigger, you can try organizing each feature folder by file type. Merging these two strategies is a great way to organize the supporting code for each feature while keeping it close together. Now, remember, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for organizing your files, and you can adjust your file structure as needed based on the evolving requirements of your project. The key is to find a balance between organization and simplicity. Just pick one method and try to abide by it as closely as possible.